This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, where every bean tells a story of adventure and passion. Nestled in the heart of Idaho's mountain wilderness, White Cloud has been mastering the craft of coffee for more than 38 years, bringing the spirit of the outdoors into every cup. Discover the difference in their premium beans, meticulously roasted to capture the essence of the mountains. From robust, full-bodied classics to creative flavored blends, White Cloud coffees are designed for you to appreciate the subtleties of premium coffee. Now, listeners of our podcast can get an exclusive 10% discount. Just use the promo code CREATIVITY at checkout. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY for your 10% discount. Start your adventure today. Journey to whitecloudcoffee.com. Tap into your most original thinking. Organize your ideas and create the opportunities to launch your creative work. Unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson.
Welcome back, friends, to our world of creativity. And welcome back from summer. Welcome to fall. And I'm welcoming you to my coffee shop, Eagle Coffee and Bakery here in Eagle, Idaho. I thought if you've been like me, been working and learning and traveling, spending time with family, you haven't had a chance maybe to keep up with all your favorite podcasts and episodes, even of our podcast, I thought we'd produce a summer highlights show and let you have a snippet of some of the conversations I've enjoyed over the summer on the podcast. We wanted to start with Uncle Matt. He's Matt McLean from Uncle Matt's Organic Juices, how he built his business literally from the ground up. I talked with Jeff Wetzler and his concept of how to ask. I spoke with a panel of authors of a sustainability book about not only how they brought the book together with multiple authors and illustrators, but what they hope to bring in creativity in the sustainability efforts. I spoke with John Novello, who's a musician and a smooth jazz / disco hit that he produced, but also about how he's embraced more metaphysical aspects of his creativity. I spoke with leadership experts Karen Hurt and David Dye about powerful phrases we can use in our creative conversations. I spoke with Jeff Thatcher about some of the global brand experiences he's created. Henry Alexander Weinset shared with me how he created a historical perspective of some towns in North Louisiana, very close to my heart and very important in my life. I grew up in North Louisiana. He's brought a real story about how the oil cities of North Louisiana were important, not only from an economic standpoint, but also from a societal and development standpoint. I spoke with Jeremy Lassman about how we can apply our human technologies. And then finally, you'll enjoy the conversation and the musical highlights from Alice Austin, a singer-songwriter who's traveling the world and touring right now. All right, so enjoy each one of these episodes. It is about 4 to maybe 7 minutes long, but in one sitting or multiple walks, cleaning the house, where do you listen to podcasts? But in one episode, you can catch up from over the summer and get inspired for your world of creativity coming all through the fall. So enjoy this special highlights episode of your world of creativity. We've been traveling the globe, gaining creative experiences from brands of all kind in entertainment, sound systems, furniture, hospitality, even in the pencil market. Today, we're going to be talking about a brand of organic juices. We're going to go from the farm to the bottle to your local store with Uncle Matt's organic brand. And I have Uncle Matt himself to talk to us, Matt McLean. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me on today. Appreciate it.
You bet. I just love the title right off the bat. You're not only the founder, but the chief uncle at Uncle Matt's Organic. That's a lot of weight.
Yeah, that's typically the question I get every time. Is it really an uncle? Yeah, it's really an uncle. And so I started this when I was 27. Now I'm 52. But the best part was when I was doing demos when I was 27 years old, people would go, "Who is Uncle Matt?" And I'd say, "That's me." And some people were just in dispute. They're like, "No way, you're Uncle Matt." I'm like, I'm I have the youngest of three. I have two
Yes,
nieces and nephews at the time, so it was.
it's a title to live up to for sure. But so you've been growing this Uncle Matt's brand literally from the ground up, as you said, since you were 27, starting with, I read 3 acres in your dad's backyard. Was it really just 3 acres? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so he has a crazy story. Some fourth generation Florida citrus family. He had amassed, he and my grandfather at one time, 600 acres of conventional citrus in Central Florida, just here near Orlando. And the freezes of 1983, 85, and 89 wiped them out
Mm,
and literally killed everything right to the ground. They replanted later, but he just had 10 acres that he lived on. And where I grew up in his backyard, there was about 3 acres that was replanted. And so when I started Uncle Matt's in June of 1999, that was what was left of the 600 acres that they had was just a little bit of citrus he had around his house. So it was quite the story of perseverance for my dad and granddad. They both became consultants and moved on to different parts within the industry and within the state after being grove owners to that amount. He'll tell you, we in one cold night he went from having nothing but assets to nothing but liabilities,
mm.
and the perseverance it takes for a person to overcome that. So we when I started, it was interesting that we instead of the 600 acres, we started with the small amount, but then we grew from
Yes. And entrepreneurs face all sorts of obstacles and challenges, but when you're dealing with Mother Nature, that adds a whole nother layer, doesn't it?
It sure does. You do not have control over Mother Nature. That is for sure. And my granddad said it best: there were never two seasons that are the same. So if you love change, get into agriculture.
Love that. It certainly makes you earn the. I thought it was fun on your website. There's a t-shirt that says respect your elderberries, which I was going to be ordering right off the bat. But it brings a whole nother level of respect for the elderberries, doesn't it?
So we do some fun things with orange juice, and one of them is we added elderberry juice to it, and we called it Ultimate Immune. We boost it with C, zinc, and with D. But yeah, that elderberry is it's a tart berry, but it blends well with orange juice. And so we had a little fun being creative, right? So that
Yes.
was a creative tagline. So then came up with that, and it's fun on a T-shirt. It gets a lot of fun remarks as you walk around with respect to your elderberries on the
I can
T-shirt.
only imagine. I'm so glad today our guest is going to talk about this idea that sounds so simple. It's like asking for directions when you're on a road trip, but we don't take the time and we drive around. We waste a lot of time. We waste a lot of fuel. And finally, we say, we've got to get some answers. And you know what we do? Ask. And that's the title of our guest's new book, Ask. Jeff Wetzler is my guest.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be with you. I love that metaphor, by the way.
We've all experienced it, right? Either the
That's right.
receiving, the giving, the chiding, the somewhere along the way. Why don't you just ask? It could be at the department store,
That's
which
right.
many of our listeners know what a department store is. Others are like, "What are you talking about?" But this idea that we have to stop and ask, it sounds so simple, and yet it's maybe so hard for some people.
That's right. And when you ask someone for directions, maybe you're not just going to find out the fastest route, but also, hey, by the way, there's this great coffee shop that you should stop by. Or hey, did you know this town was known for this? Or all kinds of other little gems that are hidden in people's minds that we would never find out if we didn't ask.
So true. And by the way, Ask has been just published by the Hachette Group. And I love the subtitle, Jeff, Tap into the Hidden Wisdom of People Around You for Unexpected Breakthroughs in Leadership and Life. It's a mouthful, but every one of those phrases, we're tapping into hidden wisdom. Why don't we just take advantage of other people's experience? What do you think the block is to asking?
There's a few different blocks. The first one is very often we don't even realize there's something to ask about because we're not curious. We have ways of kind of sizing up people and sizing up situations and very quickly concluding, I know what's going on here. I know what they know or they don't know. And we feel certain. And when we feel certain, that's one of the fastest things that shuts down our curiosity. And so we just walk through the world not even realizing, hey, I could ask for directions. I could ask for help. I could ask for this person what they know because I'm in my bubble of knowing what I know and being certain about that. So there is that. Sometimes we don't ask because we think that it's going to feel too sensitive to the other person for us to ask them that question. If we ask them how come they did this, or how did they get to this place, or that they don't, we think that they're going to be burdened or offended by being asked. And there's really a lot of interesting research that shows it turns out people actually appreciate being asked by and large. And so we often over attribute sensitivity when in fact people are dying to be asked a question. So that's another reason. Another reason is that asking is a skill. And so most of us have not been trained in actually how do you ask questions in effective ways. And so without that training, we don't do it. And then, of course, I think that the driving directions is a perfect metaphor for sometimes we don't ask because it's too prideful. We think it would expose my own ignorance, and somehow exposing my ignorance is a bad thing. And so that we let that stop us from asking.
So true. In fact, as I was reading this model, making asking safe,
Yes.
I think about that pride part. It's you ought to know that, or I'm going to be too embarrassed to ask somebody like Jeff, how did you get the Harvard Business School professor to write your yeah, so there's
Yeah.
this idea that you ought to know this already, maybe, or there would be an embarrassment. Yes.
Yeah, and I think we live in our culture can condition us and send the message that somehow not knowing something is a sign of weakness. When I actually think not knowing something is a sign of being a learner and being willing to say that out loud. And most of us don't know most things. And so if we could just own that, how much better could we learn from one another?
And I think about we've been talking about these everyday analogies, and they're good to frame it. But let's get down to there's sometimes when you're saying, how do I get a business loan?
Yeah.
How do I start an LLC? And what are the implications of that for my business, for my taxes, for my legal
Right. Right.
issues? But sometimes, how do I get a record on Spotify?
Yeah.
Literally, you've got to ask these how-to questions because you've got to take your business or your practice forward.
Yeah, and I think when we're stuck on those, how do I do any one of those things that you said? One of the shifts that I like to encourage people to make is to shift it to who could I ask? Who might know that? Even with my son, who is very interested in science and has a ton of questions. I remember there was a time when he was really stuck on how did electromagnets work? And damn if I remember how they work. I couldn't answer his questions, but I did say, who could we ask? And then we realized that down the street from us is someone who's a physics teacher. And so we trundled on down the street and knocked on his door. And one of the lessons I hoped to leave my son with was not so much about electromagnets, but that when you're stuck, ask yourself who might know, and then you could start from there. And then just to complete the ask approach,
Yes.
my favorite, it's called reflect and reconnect. It's my favorite because my own personal and professional passion in life is learning. And reflection is the key to learning. Reflection is what makes the difference between having an experience versus having an experience and actually getting some insight out of it. And I think a lot of people think that reflection is some mysterious or esoteric thing. I say it's reflect and reconnect because it's going back to the other person and saying, thank you for sharing what you shared, some common time that we spent together or some people that we know together who put us back in touch.
Even how we were introduced to each other. My former guest, Adam Alter, reached
Yes,
out and said, hey, what a great conversation. Would you like
exactly.
to talk to another friend of mine?
Exactly.
So, I mean,
I think that's how it goes.
I think about that as the hidden breakthroughs,
Yes.
and it's leadership in life. It's one thing I'm doing research. I just want to open up my eyes to the rest of the world and meet people I couldn't have met before. And what a great platform to do that.
And you just never know who knows what, who knows who can help, who you're going to learn from.
Today, we're thrilled to celebrate the creativity and innovation around the world as it applies to sustainability. And we've just had such a pleasure bringing together diverse talents to produce a collective and collaborative book on the subject. There's co authors and artists from all over the world that have contributed to the project. So, we wanted to bring together a panel today of participants and contributors and the leader of the whole project, Katja Schimmel. Katja, welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Mark. Thank you for this initiative to bringing us together. And actually, which is a nice opportunity, not only to know some of the co-authors, which I haven't never seen, but we will come to that process, but also to speak a little bit, about not only the result, which I think is a wonderful book, but you will tell me, but also about the process, because for me, it's interesting part as a coordinator of this is really the process.
Joining our panel also is Daniela Marzavan and Sandra Horlings and Dorta Nielsen, all contributors to the book.
So I really enjoy this collective book project. So just perhaps to give a bit of background, since 2015 at Mindshake, which is the consultancy I'm leading, we're not a book producer, but we have these projects and we have this to celebrate the Creativity and Innovation Week, which you all know is between 15th and 21st of April every year. So it's the World Creativity and Innovation Week, but there's also the day, which is the 21st. And the United Nations associated that day to sustainability. So as we do these projects to celebrate creativity and innovation since years, the last year we thought, okay, what would be nice for the next year? And as we were also researching a lot in sustainability and concretely in circular economy, we thought, okay, let us associate creativity to sustainability as the 21st is doing in the celebrations. So that's the reason that we launched the book on the 21st of April. And so the title for the book came up, which is Creativity for a Sustainable Future. And yes, and then it's always the question, okay, so who could write there? Who what we want to have in the book? Of course, the first thing is always what I'm doing, but also with friends and collaborators from other books. So who do we know who has something to contribute with, obviously? So we have always a little group of people, but then comes the snowball effect. And I have to say, Daniela this year was super active. I think probably the combination was some people which already worked with us in book projects. Others came through the initiative of the ambassadors from the Creativity and Innovation Week, where I am the ambassador for Portugal since last year. So I thought, oh, that's a wonderful opportunity also to invite actually I invited all of them, the European ones, and some went in. And so that was one part. And then Daniela came and said, oh, I'm on this wonderful conference. Daniela, do you want to explain how you did the connection actually with Mark and Sandra, who are here? And I did the connection with Dorta, who is here.
Good. Daniela, Katya has talked about a snowball effect. You are the snowballer of networking. You really created quite a snowstorm of contribution.
Thank you. Yeah, I love snow and snowballing. Indeed, I've known Katya's celebration of Leonardo da Vinci's birthday since 3 years now. She's invited me to celebrate with her the World's Innovation and Creativity Week. I couldn't stop but thinking who could be involved in this Portuguese, European, but actually global celebration of creativity. And when her invitation came, I was just in Oslo at the Medinga Group conference, where we all know that we brought together people from the area of sustainability and conscientious branding. And we had very interesting panels on these topics. And of course, I started to ask some of our colleagues from Medinga, from the think tank, which I'm a very young member of, if they would like to contribute. So that was the snowball. And maybe I also shared it in my social media channel. I don't remember quite exactly how that came together.
Mm-hmm. And Sandra, as you looked across the topics that ended up being covered in this book, it's not only a wide range of creatives, but a wide range of points of view on how we can apply creativity to sustainability. What were some of your takes?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you, Katja. And also thank you, Dorte, for contributing to the book. I never thought I would be connected to Leonardo da Vinci via Daniela. But indeed, I think the future that we are faced, there's a lot of challenges and complexity. So it is great that we have multiple perspectives and multiple points of view combined in this book, because I think that's also part of the creativity that we need to help solve those challenges. Because if one road turns to be a dead-end street, then we do need people that look for other roads and other scenarios to help us overcome the challenges that we face. So I'm really glad with the multiple perspectives that are encaptured in the book.
And Dorte, the idea of this book is meant to be certainly more than academic. This is not just a collection of articles of what might be done someday, but it's really meant to be actionable. Did you find these articles and these chapters to be practical and actionable?
Yes, and I think it's talking about the snowball effect. I think it's very important that this can be a beginning and it's something that we can build on, and it can be more of a movement so that we actually demonstrate throughout the book how we can use creative thinking to make a difference and to actually approach the global goals in many different ways and use our creativity to build a better future.
Today's Creative Passport, we're stamping in Nashville, Tennessee, a creative capital certainly for music. And my guest is John Novello, Grammy Award-winning jazz pianist and composer. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. My pleasure.
We're going to have a great conversation, not only about your music, but also how you've now taken some of those experiences and life learnings into your new book, The Invisible Architect. It's a fascinating transformational self-help book.
Yeah, I would have never thought would have happened.
I can't wait to hear how it did emerge. But let's start with your musical journey and evolution. As a musician, you were inspired to pursue jazz and composition, and certainly then rising to the status of a Grammy Award. It's been terrific. What inspired you along the way, especially at the beginning, to pursue music?
In hindsight, I believe our purposes have all been worked out pre-birth. That's just my own experiences, and we have to uncover them. And we have all kinds of tips and intuitions and gut feelings that we should pay attention to. When I was 3 years old, I saw an accordion player on TV, and I was sitting there with my parents, and for some reason, that was the first time the Invisible Architect, which later on I described, was a voice in my head. It was clear as you and I talking, and it said, "Point to the TV." So at 3 years old, I just went, "Dadu," and my parents figured that meant I wanted to study the accordion. It wasn't really the accordion, but I saw a keyboard. So eventually, a few years later, I started studying the accordion, and I liked the idea of music and being able to organize and play music. And especially got bit when I was 13. I played an Italian party, played the accordion, and I was sitting there. First job I ever had, was enforced by my parents I should go do this. And I was playing the accordion, imagining about 150 boisterous Italians partying and ignoring this 13-year-old. And I felt very self-conscious, and my uncle comes over and he says, "Hey, don't you know how to get people's attention, for God's sake? Do you know the tarantella?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Stand up and play it and watch what happens." I stood up and went, did it, and I started playing it. Unbelievable. All of a sudden, all these 100 people, their heads turned. They came over, they started dancing in a train. And later on in the evening, I got paid, and I went, I get to have the powerful feeling of making people happy and dance, and they pay me. Maybe it's something I should pursue, and that's what started the whole thing.
And this power to, well, it's entertaining for sure, but it's to engage the audience. And I can't help but think that those same principles continued along your career until you had this #1 Billboard smooth jazz hit, Good to Go. Same idea, right? It's like the audience needs to hear this.
Yeah, exactly. I eventually got lucky in the small town I was in, Erie, Pennsylvania. It doesn't really have much of a music situation, so you would think it would be hard to be discovered. I think I was blessed because a famous producer traveled from New York City to Cleveland on Route 90, and you have to go by Erie, Pennsylvania by the lake. And it was a snowstorm that was so bad, the drifts were so bad, he pulled over to the Ramada Inn right off of 90. And my band, which was one of the top cover bands in the area, playing all the R&B songs and rock songs and everything, he came down to the lobby bar just to have a drink, and he saw my band playing, and he flipped. And he was a famous producer. At the time, he was producing a rock group called the Outsiders, and they had a big tune called "Time Won't Let Me."
Mm-hmm.
And he came up to me and said, "Are you the leader?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Are you signed?" I didn't even know what he meant. Signed me. He said, "To a record deal." I said, "I don't think so." And he goes, "We are now." And we cut to the chase. 3 weeks later, we got a contract in the mail, got a record deal, and started driving up to Cleveland to do a record. And we released a single first. That's what they did in those days to see if it did well. And it did really well. It was in the top 5 or something. And we were about to go do the rest of the album. And I never thought there was any kind of struggle related to music because everything was happening so easy. And then the next thing you know, the singer got drafted. Those were the days of the draft.
Yes.
And once they take your lead singer, the politics is over. The band is non-existent. Even though I was the leader, did all the writing and arranging, the lead singer is the front man. So they canceled it. And that was devastating to me. And I had to recover from that. But in hindsight, I knew that that was like the creator of all slapping me upside the head saying, "You got more work to do." And I eventually did some research, recovered, went to Boston, Berklee School of Music, and studied with all the greats. And then I got lured to go out to California. And that's where my career really started.
Mm-hmm. And this idea, certainly no coincidences. There was a reason that guy got caught in a snowstorm.
Absolutely.
He needed to and later, of course, the coincidence of meeting Donna Summer while she was on tour and then joining up with her band. Again, you could say it was luck.
Yeah, you could say I was luck, but there's so many of these, of which 20 of them I talk about in my book, because the subtitle of my book is How to Design Your Perfect Life from Within. And as we think and believe within, so without. And that's really what the book is about, to control your thoughts and your desires and how to design your life from within so you create the world without. And if the world without is not something you want, then let's not examine the world without us, let's examine the world within. The orchestrations were going on, and I was in Japan with The Taste of Honey, and I was the musical director for that band, and we had a hit song called Get Down Boogie. Now, this is funny.
Love that song.
This is funny because I'm a jazz guy, and that would be the last thing and I'd want to play. It's a disco tune.
We delve into the minds of innovative thinkers and leaders who shape our creative worlds. And today we're just so thrilled to have as our guests Karen Hurt and David Dye. They're the duo behind Let's Grow Leaders. And as I think about leaders in the creative areas, David and Karen, we're all known for kind of practical tools and development programs. Yet, sometimes we take it really personally. And the creative spirit can be pretty fragile. And you have a great book called Powerful Phrases for Dealing with Workplace Conflict. I can imagine that there's a lot of these phrases that are meant to get to the root of the issue and yet preserve the person. Karen, how do we balance those two things? Feedback and creativity.
I think just start with thinking about where does creativity come from? And often it comes from pushing against edges of things, right? So you've got two people who have divergent points of view, divergent perspectives. And when you can have the real, genuine conversations and are not afraid to bring your perspective to the table, even if you know the other person's going to disagree, on the other side of that is often where the real creative breakthroughs happen. And I just always think about David and I usually have pretty much the opposite point of view on some of the biggest business challenges that we have. We're very aligned philosophically in our values and our approach to growing leaders, but how we run our business, our brains work radically differently. And there is a constant tension. But what we find is we can have those productive conversations. On the other side of that is where our best work really happens.
Great. And this idea of workplace conflict, David, when we were first introducing each other, the idea of workplace is even changing.
That's right. So when HarperCollins approached us to write this book, as we look at the landscape of work today, it looks like so many different things. And we surveyed 5,000 plus people around the world, 46 different countries, to find out what was going on with workplace conflict. And 70% of them said they're experiencing the same or more conflict as they had in the past. And when you get into reasons why, this issue of the changing workplace is definitely one of the reasons why. There are so many different ways that work can look. What is the workplace? It's hybrid, remote, across time zones, lots of different situations. The managers more and more are not equipped to lead through. And so you start to see disengagement rates for managers for the first time exceeding that of employees. And all of the conflict that then creeps into all of that is we don't have norms. Should we have our camera on or off? What does work from anywhere actually mean? One of our favorite examples of that was an organization who said, yeah, we've got a work from anywhere policy. And one of the folks got on LinkedIn with a picture of himself at the petting zoo with his laptop on a Zoom call with the ponies, and was responding to all of the, oh, isn't that cute comments, but was not responding to colleagues' emails. And so, you get some of those kinds of things that can really create some conflict as well.
I do remember coming back from programs as a new manager, as a young leader, and somebody would naturally say, you just came back from a seminar, didn't you?
Yes. And so often, if we can be vulnerable and transparent and say, hey, I just went to this program and I talked to these two folks, Karen and David, and they had this idea that if we check for understanding with one another, which is a powerful phrase in various forms throughout the book, that it's going to help us avoid a lot of headache, heartache, and frustration. So here's what that looks like. So what I'm hearing you say is this: I'd really like to practice that language, like own it. I just learned this and I want to share it, and let's see if we can do it together.
We continue to travel the globe talking to creative leaders about their experiences. And our guest today is certainly one of those leaders with more than 40 years of experience creating world-class brand experiences that really transcend borders. And my guest is Jeff Thatcher. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. It's great to be here.
You've got some great projects under your belt, Jeff, like the Warner Brothers World in Abu Dhabi, the FM Global Center in Singapore. I love to read about your work with the F1 team with Mercedes and AMG, and a great book, The CEO's Time Machine. But these days, of course, many of our creative minds are on AI and how that's going to fit in to creative industries and creative leadership. What are you thinking about these days when it comes to AI?
When it comes to artificial intelligence, there's two sides to it. There's the dystopian, thinking about the future of AI, whether we're going to be ruled by a machine. And then it's the side of it where it's simply another tool in storytelling. I'm right now at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, and we're working on a new experience here that's going to leverage the power of AI to put guests in the game. And guess what? In the 19th century, they used the power of a Pepper's ghost to put a performer in a story in a new way. And today we call that a hologram. Technology from the 19th century, and people were probably freaking out in 1862 when a magician came up with the Pepper's ghost. But it's just technology. And you know what? I remember the first time I saw an animatronic. I was working at Laguna Amusement Park, and I was assigned to count light bulbs across the park. I know.
Yeah, love that. Yes.
Off season, it's dark and cold, and my job was to count light bulbs. And walking through some of it, we had Dracula's Castle and the Terror Ride. And these old animatronics. Again, animatronics, we think of Disney, but these animatronics go all the way back to the 14th and 15th, 16th century. There's this swan that was made I think in the 18th century in France. I forget the name of it. There's another one, Marie Antoinette playing the piano. And then there's a swan, I think, in the UK. This technology's been around forever, and it's all the technology. Theatrical lighting, augmented reality, virtual reality, video, film, 3D film, which goes back to at least the 1950s, right?
Yes.
All of this technology is simply to help us put people in a story. That's what we're trying to do. And AI allows us to put people in a story that's so incredibly fun. I'll give you an example. I was doing a workshop last week on leadership, and we had several participants. These are corporate executives who were coming in, and we took their bios, which we had edited their bios and wrote bios for them. And we actually did that by hand, with human being. But then we put their bio into ChatGPT 4 and said, create me a rhyming song. It did. Then we dropped that rhyming song, the lyric, that song into Suno. Did I pronounce it? Suno, whatever. Suno, which is a song making AI app. And we created an individual customized song for each of them, less than 5 minutes per person, create this song. Then when they came into the workshop, we had their song playing alongside other songs, like the ubiquitous Tina Turner, "You're simply the best."
Yes.
Better than all. Yeah, those typical songs you play as is walk-in music and break music in a workshop that kind of get people excited, John, the Eagles, whatever. But then we would sneak in these songs, and they were about them. It would be like, Mark Stinson, creative Peter, he's awesome. So we create these songs, and it was hilarious because before the workshop began, everybody gathered, nobody noticed. First break, nobody noticed. And then finally the lunch break, somebody went around, they're like,
Am I catching the?
I'm like, me? Me? And then they listened, and they were like, they laughed, and songs were about them. The songs were about leadership, and it's simply a tool to tell a story. It's a tool to bring people into the experience. We get all like hyperventilating about AI and, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? It's going to ruin our jobs. It's going to change the world. You're right. It is, but don't freak out. And the other story that I like to use, I worked on a museum project a long time ago. It was in Iron Bridge, UK, or Coalbrookdale, Iron Bridge. And what's at Iron Bridge? The first iron bridge, where they invented the blast furnace. And this guy, all he was trying to do was invent a better way to make a copper pot. He wanted to make a cheaper copper pot because iron is cheaper than copper. And wouldn't it be nice if I could make a iron pot cheaper? And so he invented the blast furnace. So he could use coke or coal, create a blast furnace, get it hot enough that he could melt that iron and make a iron pot. That was his objective. That's all he was trying to do. He had no idea that the imagination of the people around him were going to take that blast furnace and start making pistons, and start making railways, and start making rail ties, and start making bridges, and start making skyscrapers, and unleash the Industrial Revolution because they can, with iron, make steam engines and all kinds of amazing, cool things. And it's going to be true with AI. People are going to use AI in ways that their creators never possibly imagined. And the same, we're going to use AI in ways that people have never imagined. And we're going to use it in the same way we use all other technology. We're going to use it to connect with each other. We're going to use it to tell stories. And that's what I'm excited about as a creative person on the AI front, is it's another arrow in my quiver of experience design. And it, honestly, people get all hyperventilated about it, but it's not any different than when they came out with interactive touchscreen and 3D film. And I tell you what, I was at a demo 2 weeks ago in Los Angeles for the first 3D LED screen out there in liminal space. And again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, but when you project 3D, it shifts. That's why you have glasses on.
That's right. Yes.
That works with a projection. It doesn't work with LED because you have these physical points of light. And so you can't shift it in the same way. And these guys figured out how to basically create a 3D projection on an LED screen. And that gives us 10 times more depth back into the screen and 10 times more projection out from the screen. And plus it allows you to have a wider peripheral view of 3D. So I can see it on a curved screen this way instead of just right in front of me. And that is going to unleash so many amazing storytelling opportunities for those of us who love to create stories and love to create experiences. And sorry, this is a very long.
No, but I really love it. I think we
underscore,
let's rewind and underscore a couple of points. That experience design is putting the user, the customer, the brand in the story. In any way we can do that with tools, methods, techniques. And if we fought the the transition from whale oil to electricity, where would we be? Stay tuned for our next episode of Your World of Creativity. We're going to continue our around the world journeys. We've stamped our passport in Georgia today, Creativity Center of Atlanta. Jeff works out of Savannah, which is a great creative center. But we're going to travel to all the creative capitals around the world.
The thing that I get is that they have a real nostalgia for the older times. And I think what I heard is that they felt like in that particular community, places like Oil City, it's not as good as it used to be. There's not as many people there. There's not as much money. And yes, you're exactly right. There's still a lot of oil money being made elsewhere. But I think what I got was a sense that our community, Oil City, and directly around it, there's just not much going on and just things aren't as good as they used to be. So I think that's a narrative that I got when I spoke to old timers in the area.
Yeah. But you also, we were talking about social and societal opportunities. I don't think if it weren't for the wealth of the oil, would there be a Louisiana hayride?
Just one of the things that I wanted to do is to give the readers a picture of just what life was like and what all the different communities were like. And it's funny, there's no one central character, I think, in the book, but one of the cool things about it that I tried to do is that there are recurring characters. So maybe in one chapter, you'll see, oh, here's this guy who is a driller who lives in Homer, and then he shows up later in a different place. So there's no one central figure that I'm following during the narrative, but I want to give you a bird's eye view of what all the different towns were like, how people got from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at it from that interconnected technology, that body, mind, spirit together, I see passion as the fuel of human energy, and especially what distinguishes humans from animals and machines.
It's driven by scarcity sometimes.
Yeah.
And boy, don't we creatives have this scarcity mentality? I guess, where does this scarcity come from? And then how do we overcome that?
Of course, it comes from the operating system. The operating system drives our worldview in the broadest picture. And so if we don't challenge those limitations, then it's going to be unconsciously running the show. The way that I have tried to push those limits was really to second guess or question how that natural selection, that how the randomized and victimized way of being, the suspension of disbelief of fear itself. And it depends on how far you want to take the metaphor into play, like how real you want to suspend your disbelief there and really see it. Yeah.
And your background is as a technologist. So you're certainly coming from that background and that training and vocation.
Yeah.
And then where did you see inserting passion, or where does passion get expressed in technology?
That's a really good question, because I think once we're looking at the mind as software, I went to what is the operating system of the human species, and we can go towards the evolution with survival of the fittest. That's the old operating system, I would say. And then we have to ask, what is the fuel of human energy in survival of the fittest? And I would say it would be one of fear and negativity. The quiz is on the homepage. In the services, you can book your demo call. We're there if you have any questions. And we got a blog with a bunch of cool articles about passion, about conscious evolution, survival of the fittest, great resources. And you get really a taste of the cleaner energy way of life that we are striving for.
Yeah, love it. I've read many of those articles and they're really good. I look forward to taking this quiz and maybe seeing where I stand.
Yes.
Putting practice behind the philosophies, for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Listeners, my guest has been Jeremy Lassman. Jeremy, I can't thank you enough for being on the show.
Oh man, it's been a blast. Thank you for having me, Mark. Happy creativity to you and all the listeners.
Oh, thanks so much.
The quiz is on the homepage. In the services, you can book your demo call. We're there if you have any questions. And we got a blog with a bunch of cool articles about passion, about conscious evolution, survival of the fittest, great resources. And you get really a taste of the cleaner energy way of life that we are striving for.
Yeah, love it. I've read many of those articles and they're really good. I look forward to taking this quiz and maybe seeing where I stand.
Yes.
Putting practice behind the philosophies. First, my guest has been Jeremy Lastman. Jeremy, I can't thank you enough for being on the show.
Oh man, it's been a blast.
Thanks for tuning in to Your World of Creativity. Today, I'm so happy to be talking to singer-songwriter Alice Austin. Alice, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here and talking to you.
Thanks. You were born in Vermont, now living and working out of LA. We've caught up with you mid-tour, city to city travel. So I know that can be both exciting and tiring. So thanks for making time for it.
You're welcome.
As I was listening and reading about your music, I was going to say it defies labeling and genre, but really I think it's because you enjoy writing and singing all sorts of genres, from punk, some soft rock, and country rock even. How do you decide, or it's your choice? I saw on your Facebook, it's I do what I want. You're really making the decision on how that music comes out. How are you guided to do that?
Great question. A lot of times with the creative element has to lead the way, and then I have to figure out the rest of it later as far as how to present it and marketing, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think a lot of artists find their genre and they stick to it. But I just think that over the years, and this has been decades that I've been playing, not just years, I just will have an inspiration for something and I'll just take off and run with it and not know where it's going. And it'll take shape in the studio. And I don't even know what kind of song it is. I just write songs. And then I work with a producer who's great, who will help me stylize things if I don't have a particular vision about exactly how I want it to be, for example. And I think that finding your voice as an artist is really key if you're going to do something like that, because I don't sing with any kind of indie rock accent. I just sing with a pure kind of voice, whether I'm singing metal or whether I'm singing sort of country or Americana. It's still, people always say it still sounds like you. It doesn't matter, for some reason. And I think a good example for me is someone like Beck, who has done so many different genres, and it just sounds like Beck. So that's always been something that is an important artistic freedom to me, is to be able to just spread out that way.
And like you said, your career spans many years, many bands, many songs. How does the collaboration, you started with a band called Zola Turn, Queen Tangerine, the Lavas, even these names are great. And I can imagine how the collaboration might influence the presentation or production of the song. How has that been for you?
Yeah, totally. Collaborating with people has been the exercise in thinking that this is going to take me somewhere else. And it absolutely has, but never in the ways that I think it's going to. It's been an exercise in surrendering the ego to something greater and thinking that I'm good at it until I get inside there and I'm like, oh, this is really hard. This is really hard. I've lost control of this creative element. And if I can get myself there, it always is something so much greater than the sum of the parts if I'm working with the right people. So I think that's happened more and more the older I get and the more writing I've done. And I don't need to do that. I have tons and tons of songs, but I feel as though I do need to do it as far as going somewhere different with the material and being able to, everybody has a different bag of tricks to draw from. I have my own. And when you're really working with someone who's able to set their ego aside, and you are too, it's mind-blowing to see, wow, this is nothing I would ever come up with on my own. I think there are so many different opportunities and avenues. And I think that we tend to undervalue ourselves as we've been trained to not value what this service is that we're doing. And there is a market for it. And open your eyes, because it's a constant stream of opportunity. And it may not look like what you think it is. I don't think it was a natural progression. And I was looking for opportunities. People knew I was looking for opportunities.
Take a listen to the music. I think you'll really love it.
Unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator Mark Stinson. This program was produced by BSB Media, creators of IntelliKey Leadership Stories, Unlocking Your World of Creativity, and thepeaceroom.love. Are you an author who's tired of the long waits and low royalties? Exact Rush is here to change the game. We specialize in publishing with precision, and we get your book to market in just 3 to 6 months, not years. But we're not just about books. We also support your photography, web design, and content creation needs. Our focus ranges from spirituality to pop culture, and we're excited about our diverse lineup of upcoming releases. So if you're ready to keep more of your hard-earned money and get published faster, Exact Rush is your ticket. Visit exactrush.com and turn your creative dream into a profitable reality today.